On today's episode, I'll get into my top 5 Blackhawks prospect ranking and we'll discuss which defenseman Kyle Davidson could pursue this summer.
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, be sure to do me a quick favor, hit that like button, comment down below as well, and let me know which defenseman you would like to see the Blackhawks pursue on the free agent market here this summer, and also your reaction to my Blackhawks Summer 2024 top 5 prospects ranking. Also, go and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. You're not going to want to miss out on all the great Blackhawks content that I'm going to be pumping out ahead of the NHL draft and free agency following, leading up into the start of the season later on this fall. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. It's 100% free, won't cost you anything, and really does go a long way for yours truly. Last but certainly not least, got to let you all know today's episode is sponsored by FanDuel. Sign up today and visit fanduel.com/lockedon to get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. All right, good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. Another spicy episode in store for you all here today. And to kick things off, without any further ado, it's time to get into my top 5 for my Blackhawks Summer 2024 top prospects list, which was extended to 20 from 10 here this year. And I've already gone over parts 1, 2, and 3. So if you're not already caught up on my top 20 rankings, make sure to go and check those parts out right here, right now. I mean, it kind of only makes sense to go in order, right? You can easily find those episodes on my YouTube channel under the 2024 top prospects playlist. And again, hit that subscribe button for me if you haven't done so already. But very excited to get into my top 5 here today. I know when I start these lists, that's usually what the people are wanting to know. Jack, who do you have in your top 10? Who do you have in your top 5? Who do you have coming in at number 1? Well, let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get on into it. Kicking things off in my top 5 at number 5 is none other than Ryan Green. Maybe a little higher than some other folks have him in their rankings, but I'm personally very high on this kid. 6'1", 180-pound center who turns 21 later on in the fall in October. And of course, was the 57th overall selection by the Blackhawks in the second round back in the 2022 NHL draft. Had a really good year in the USHL with the Green Bay Gamblers, 19 goals, 32 assists for 51 points in 59 games there, but really hit his stride and found his footing once he joined Boston University and made the leap to college hockey. Had an exquisite freshman season with 31 points in 38 games in their third line center role, 9 goals and 22 assists, and he followed that up with an even more spectacular sophomore campaign, getting more ice time, getting a bigger role, utilized as the Terriers' second line center behind only Macklin Celebrini, and he wound up putting up 36 points, 12 goals, and 24 assists in 40 games during his sophomore season. It looks like he is going to go back to Boston University, but quite honestly, I'm A-okay with that decision. As a junior, he's going to be an upperclassman. I expect him to probably wear a letter for that team next year and to potentially, be the head honcho for Boston University, one of the most prestigious programs in all of college hockey. I think that's going to be a really great experience for him. I think the last 2 years has already been a really good experience, and I think he shapes up to be a very good two-way center at the NHL level one day. And I do believe he's going to play center. He's a good face-off man, works hard in his two-way play, and has a good offensive game as well with good playmaking, good creativity. He's got some really silky hands for a player. I don't want to say of his size. He's only 6'1", but a very capable deker and dangler out there. And I do think his shot has been getting better these last couple of years as well. Been utilizing that bumper role on the power play for Boston University and scored a lot of goals in that department. So I'm really excited about Ryan Green for his two-way play, his skating, his offensive upside. I think he could potentially be the third line center of the future for the Chicago Blackhawks behind Oliver Moore and Connor Bedard. So I'm really high on Ryan Green. I know maybe higher on my list than some others have him, but I do think he's going to be a very solid NHLer. I think he's someone that could be a power play 2 type of guy, maybe even a power play 1 if he can turn into an effective bumper roll guy, and also might be utilized on the penalty kill as well. So very versatile, I think can be used in a lot of different areas, and that's what makes him unique and can provide value to this Blackhawks forward group that has a lot of high-end players like Bedard, Frank Nazar, Oliver Moore, maybe even Ivan Demidov if they draft him second overall. I think Ryan Green could be one of those middle 6 to, I don't want to call him a bottom 6 forward because I think he is going to be a third liner. Which I guess is bottom 6, but he has second line upside still in that same boat. But I think he's going to be a very good player. I have him coming in at number 5 and very stoked to see what kind of numbers he's going to be putting up as the man for Boston University this year. Coming in next at number 4 is Drew Commesso, 6'2", 185-pound goaltender who turns 22 later on the summer here in July and was selected 46 overall by the Blackhawks in the second round back in the 2020 NHL Draft. Played 3 years of college hockey after playing for the United States Development Program, put up really sound numbers with Boston University as well, funny enough. Never had a save percentage worse than .913 and no goals against average above 3 in his 3 years there. Also got some good experience playing for Team USA at the Olympics. He's played at the World Championships and gotten some opportunities there. So a plethora of good opportunities for Drew Commesso in his young career. And then he, of course, made the leap to professional hockey last year, spent the entirety of the season down in Rockford, and had a pretty solid rookie pro campaign with a 18-16-4 record, 2.65 goals against, .906 save percentage, and 2 shutouts in 38 appearances as a 21-year-old. I've been excited about Drew Commesso for the last couple of years now, even more excited now that he's finally on the professional scene. I do think he's going to spend the majority, if not all, of next season down in Rockford developing as well, but could be ready to take on that backup role and be a full-time NHLer for the 2025-2026 season. And as far as his projection, I think he's capable of being a starter at the next level. He doesn't have any flashy jump off the charts skill set, but he's very sturdy, has very good positioning, and just remains very calm and poised in net. And as I mentioned, has a plethora of good experiences at a young age that's only going to continue to rack up in Rockford before he makes the jump to Chicago. I think he could be the future of the future in net for the Chicago Blackhawks organization. So Commesso comes in at number 4. Next up at number 3, Ethan Del Mastro, 6'4", 205-pound left-handed defenseman who turns 22 in January, still only 21 years old. And boy, has he developed nicely after being a 4th-round selection, 105th overall back in the 2021 NHL Draft. Had a very successful final junior season in the OHL with the Mississauga Steelheads, where he was the captain before getting traded to the Sarnia Sting. 59.7 goals and 52 assists in 52 combined games for those two teams. He's also won a couple of gold medals while representing Team Canada in his young career as well, and then finally turned pro last season, played most of the year down in Rockford, did get 2 games of NHL action to make his debut. Kind of, I think, is a little bit of a reward for how good his rookie season was with Rockford. This guy was awesome. 37.7 goals and 30 assists in 69 AHL games, was named an AHL All-Star in his rookie year, and kind of on the Alex Vlasic track. I think the way he was utilized in Rockford this year was to work on his puck moving, his offensive game. Those were kind of concerns because he's rugged, he's physical, he's a good defenseman already, but I really think he's rounded out his game nicely down in Rockford, and I think he shapes up to be a top 4 defenseman at the next level. And I've had Ethan Del Mastro high on my list for the last year now, and I think everyone is kind of seeing why, because he plays a really simple game, but there's more offense than I think any of us anticipated. He might even have more offensive runway than Alex Vlasic. And sure, he's not as big, but he's more physical. He's just as reliable on the defensive side of things, evades pressure really well, really good at zone exits, never panics, doesn't make a ton of bad turnovers, very poised for a young man at 21 years of age. So I'm stoked about Ethan Del Mastro. He's going to be gunning to make the Blackhawks opening night roster during training camp. And I could see him as a 2A, 1B defenseman at the next level. I think he's going to be a very, very good Blackhawk blue liner for a long, long time, Hawks fans. Next up at number 2, the debate. Who goes 1, who goes 2? Number 2 is Oliver Moore for me. 5'11", 195-pound center who's still only 19 years old and won't turn 20 until January, and fell into the lap of the Chicago Blackhawks at 19 overall in the 2023 NHL Draft. Wasn't the main stud or used on that top line for the United States Development Program, but still put up really good numbers there in his draft year. 75 points, 31 goals, and 44 assists in 61 games. But that might have cost him a top 10 selection, but I'm pretty happy that wound up happening. Also chipped in for 9 points, 4 goals and 5 assists at the U18 World Juniors, and then joined on with Minnesota in college hockey this past fall for his freshman season. Got off to a little bit of a slow start, but really picked it up late in the year. Wound up with 33 points, 9 goals, 24 assists in 39 games. Took on a top 6 role later in the year, even played top line minutes, and is going to be going back to Minnesota for his sophomore season. And I think he's going to make a big time leap based on how comfortable he looked as the year progressed. I think he's going to have an excellent season, but I project him as the second line center of the future for the Chicago Blackhawks, the best skater in their prospect pool for sure. The guy has lightning fast feet and can make an impact all over the ice and wants to. I think he's going to be a very good two-way center, and quite honestly, I think that's going to work well for him because he has good offensive upside, but it's not as high as Connor Bedard's. And I think that's going to allow Oliver Moore to naturally be in that two-way role that he wants to be in. He has really good work ethic and is hard on his back check. He makes opposing puck carriers really earn the open ice out there. So he shakes up to be someone that's going to have his fingertips all over the Blackhawks' success in the future because of the wide variety of ways that he can impact the game. Really, really excited to see what kind of numbers he's going to put up with Minnesota this fall. And then coming in at number 1 with Connor Bedard and Kevin Korchinski having graduated from prospect status, number 1 on my Blackhawks summer 2024 top prospects list is none other than Frank the Tank Nazar. 5'9", 175-pound forward that I've been super pumped about since the Blackhawks drafted him. And we got a little taste of why when he made his NHL debut late in the year. Still only 20 years old, won't be turning 21 until January, and was the 13th overall selection in the 2022 NHL draft as part of that trade that the Hawks made with the Montreal Canadiens, sending Kirby Dach there. We got picks number 13 and 66. I want to say that turned into Frank Nazar and Gavin Hayes, who came in at number 11 on my Blackhawks summer 2024 top prospects list. A trade that looks pretty good for the Blackhawks a couple years removed. But in Nazar's draft year, 70 points in 56 games for the United States Development Program, 28 goals, 42 assists. Looked like he was going to be joining Adam Fantilli in a stacked Michigan team, but unfortunately suffered a knee injury that cost him the majority of his freshman season, but returned fully healthy as a sophomore and put up big-time numbers, 41 points, 17 goals, and 24 assists in 41 games to help Michigan reach the Frozen Four, and then turned pro, joined on with the Blackhawks late in the season, scored his first NHL goal, had a 6-celly, and like Ethan Del Mastro, will be trying to make this Blackhawks NHL roster out of training camp. It might be a little bit of an uphill battle for him, but they're going to give him opportunities. You know that coaching staff and front office is going to want to see what this kid has, and he has a lot in his tools. I mean, he's a good goal scorer, good playmaker, the Energizer Bunny out there, like Oliver Moore, wants to make an impact on the defensive side of things. He can do it all. He's a great skater. He can play at a high speed. Man, I think the world of Frank Nazar, and I would love to see him make the Blackhawks roster out of training camp. It would psych the fans up even more going into the season, and he has the goods that make him capable of accomplishing that feat. I think Frank Nazar, I don't know if he's going to play center in the Blackhawks organization because of how deep they are at that spot, but I could see him being a top line wing along with Connor Bedard for a long, long time. They play and think the game the same way with a lot of speed. They could be deadly in transition for years to come. Frank Nazar versus Oliver Moore was a tough decision, but what we saw Frank do with Michigan late in the year and then also stepping onto the scene in the NHL and looking pretty darn good right away, I think he has to get the top spot. But go and let me know what you think about my top 5 prospects right now in the Blackhawks prospect pool in the comment section down below. Do I have someone too high? Do I have someone too low? Let me know your feelings down below in the comments. But that's going to wrap up my Chicago Blackhawks Summer 2024 top prospects list. Coming up in just a moment, though, don't go anywhere, Hawks fans. The fun's not stopping. I'm about to get into the top free agent defensemen on the market this summer and which ones we could see the Blackhawks pursuing. But first, I need to talk to you all about Policygenius. A lot of life is unpredictable, but a good life insurance plan gives your family a financial safety net to protect against some of life's biggest unknowns. And Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace and makes choosing the right policy for your family both quick and easy. Because with Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. And some options even are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius is also the country's leading online insurance marketplace that helps you save both money and time. So you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting right here today. Go and talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the entire process, step by step along your side, comparing quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to get you the best and lowest price. So go and check life insurance off of your to-do list right now with Policygenius. Head on over to policygenius.com, or you can simply go and click the link down in the description to get your free life insurance quotes today and to see how much that you could be saving. Again, that's policygenius.com. Segment 2, not only is the NHL draft creeping up here soon, Blackhawks fans, but so is free agency right around the corner, just days after the NHL draft wraps up. And on the show, I've already broken down the free agent goaltenders on the market this summer and which options I could personally see the Blackhawks pursuing if they wind up going that route here. But today, though, I'm going to get into the top name defensemen on the market and go through which ones I think Kyle Davidson would like to add to his roster for the upcoming season. And I do think, I mentioned on the show a couple of days ago, there's multiple reports of Kyle Davidson calling around, seeing if he could add another top 6 or a top 9 forward to his team for next year. I think the Blackhawks want to add to their blue line as well. And I mean, just even based on, the NHL locks that they have on their books at the moment. It's only Alex Vlasic, Seth Jones, and Connor Murphy, right? I don't expect Jacob Megna to get a contract extension. I don't expect Jared Tenorti to get a contract extension. And Kevin Korchinski, you could probably throw him in that group, but there is a world out there where he starts the season with the Rockford IceHawks. And had he have been eligible to this past year, I think he would have played a stretch of games with the Piggies, certainly. So I'm not going to rule that out. But even with Kevin Korchinski, that's only 4 NHL defensemen that the Blackhawks have on their roster. Now, we know guys like Ethan Del Mastro, Wyatt Kaiser, Nolan Allen, Louis Crevier, Isaac Phillips, if he gets brought back as an RFA, which I don't know necessarily if I see the room for him, even though he was a prospect that I was excited about as a 5th round pick a few years ago. There are guys pushing for those open spots, and I think some of them are going to fill them. However, we do know that Kyle Davidson wants to take a step forward this season. And to do that, I think they got to shore up this blue line. And in my opinion, Blackhawks fans, and this is something I want to hear from all of you out there in the comment section, I personally think they're more inclined to add a right-handed defenseman than a left-handed defenseman based on, first off, Seth Jones, Connor Murphy, Louis Crevier are the only true right-handed defensemen in the entire pipelines right here, right now. Sam Renzel still a couple of years away, obviously. They need someone else there. And also, all the guys who are gunning for those spots outside of Crevier, which he's probably the biggest long shot to make the roster, Kaiser, Ethan Del Mastro, Allen, they're all left-handed defensemen. And I think those spots are going to go to those guys ultimately, or at least one of them, along with probably Kevin Korchinski too, or maybe even, all 3 of them and someone gets used as an extra, whatever the case may be. I personally am inclined to think if the Blackhawks do go and get help and add a free agent defenseman this summer, it's going to be on the right hand side. And also, you need a good, surefire defensive partner to help some of these left handed young prospects to develop. And Connor Murphy just hasn't done that for me personally these last few years. He's been injury plagued. His numbers and analytics have not been very good. They've really dipped compared to his first couple of years here in Chicago, where he thought he was very, very effective. He just hasn't played the same role. And even when Jake McCabe was here, like, remember how good Jake McCabe and Seth Jones looked as the top pairing before McCabe got dealt? Well, McCabe started that season with Connor Murphy, and those two played together with Team USA on the national development program back in those days, and they never found their footing. They never had any sort of success. And I think Connor Murphy has to get a lion's share of that blame. So I just personally see Murphy as a risk at this point now that he's over 30 and is probably more of a third pairing defenseman. So I would like to see the Blackhawks add a second pairing right-handed defenseman to help some of these lefties develop over the next couple of years. So that's just what I think about it personally. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. And that's not to say that the Blackhawks can't add a left-handed D this summer. I just think it might be more of the depth variety if they do go that route. But getting into the top free agent defensemen on the market here this year, some of them I'm already ruling out because I think they're ultimately going to be too expensive and they don't necessarily fit my mold again of the defenseman I think Kyle Davidson is going to pursue this summer. I don't see Brady Shea or Brandon Montour happening, two of the biggest names on the market. They're probably going to get longer term, higher AAV deals, and I just don't see Kyle Davidson dishing that out, especially when there's a lot of unknown still with what these defenseman prospects are going to turn into. So I don't think Shea or Montour fit. I don't think Shane Gostisbehere fits as an offensive-minded defenseman. I don't think Oliver Ekman-Larsson fits. I don't think TJ Brody fits. Nikita Zadorov has had a really good last couple of years, but ultimately I don't think he's going to want to come back to Chicago, especially if they're not competitive right here, right now. I don't think he enjoyed his time here very much. Eric Gustafsson, we're not doing that again. Sean Walker is a good right-handed defenseman option, but for what he's going to get paid and for the concerns on the defensive side of things, I am personally out on him. And the right-handed defenseman I think Kyle Davidson would like to add is someone who can play a solidified defensive game. That's been an issue for the Blackhawks, and they just need more of those guys, and there are a handful of them out there on the market. So let's get into some of these names. I'll start off with Tyler Myers, who I know is very polarizing, didn't have the best postseason for the Vancouver Canucks, but is an option for the Blackhawks. 6'8", 230 pounds. He's got some great size, obviously, and thinking about him and Vlasic back there on the D-core together, you get Crevier, you get Del Mastro. I mean, the Blackhawks could have the biggest blue line in all of hockey. But he's been a veteran who's been around now for quite a while. He is going to turn 35 in February. But with that being the case, I don't think Tyler Myers can really expect to get a long-term deal at this point in time. Coming off a year with Vancouver in which he had 29 points, 5 goals, and 24 assists in 77 games, has never really lived up to that rookie hype after that sound first season with the Buffalo Sabres all those years ago, but has turned into a solid second pairing defenseman. And even though the numbers weren't the best, he was the most utilized defenseman against Connor McDavid and the Edmonton Oilers in their playoff series, showing the trust that he had from head coach Rick Tocchet, still trusted upon in those roles. He's been a top 4-minute eater everywhere he's been, blocks a ton of shots, is very physical with his size, and isn't projected to command too much of a high AAV like some of these other options. His projected next contract is for $3.9 million. And if you could get Tyler Myers at, 3.5 for 2 years, I don't think that's a terrible deal for the Blackhawks. He's not one of my favorites among the list, as I'll get into more of these guys, but I do think he's an option with a low AAV that Kyle Davidson wouldn't be scared about adding to his books because it's not long-term and it's not going to cost them a bunch. Next option is a very intriguing one to me. It's Brett Pesce, 6'3", 205-pound right-handed defenseman who's going to turn 30 in November and has spent all 9 NHL seasons playing for the Carolina Hurricanes after being a third-round pick and has basically been a top 4-minute eater for all 9 of those years. His offense is a little bit capped. He only had 13 points in 70 games this year, 3 goals and 10 assists, and has never scored more than 7 goals in a year or had more than 30 points. But he is one of the most underrated right-handed defensive defensemen in the league. always put up strong analytics, but kind of like a lot of these Hurricanes free agents, there are some wonders out there about how they're going to look outside of the Hurricane system because they kind of just play like a different style of hockey, and Pesce is going to be utilized differently with another team. But he's someone who blocks a lot of shots, plays a very simple game. Yeah, he's not going to add a lot offensively, but he's going to help shore things up on the defensive side of things for the Blackhawks. Projected to get $5.5 million. The question for Pesce and a lot of these guys for the Blackhawks is, will they be willing to sign short-term deals? Because again, I don't see Kyle Davidson took on a lot of the Drew Doughty was still the minute eater back there for the Kings, but Matt Roy played a very important role for that team, who has been one of the best defensive groups in hockey the last few years. Expected to get a $6.1 million contract, though. Again, the Blackhawks would have to get it down short term. I'd personally lean Pesce over Matt Roy, but that's just me. Next up, we have Dylan DeMello, 6 foot, 190-pound right-handed defenseman who turned 31 last month in May and had his best offensive year of his career with 31 points, 3 goals, and 28 assists in 82 games for the Winnipeg Jets, where he's been for the last 5 years after bouncing between San Jose and Ottawa early on in his career. But has turned into a nice top 4 defenseman for Winnipeg the last couple of years. Been paired with Josh Morrissey as of late, and he does a lot of the dirty work there. But Dylan DeMello plays a no-nonsense, very simplified game and has shown more offensively than I think people anticipated he had in store over these last couple of years, and is projected to not command as much money as Matt Roy or a Brett Pesce. Projected to get $4.9 million on his next deal. He's someone like Pesce that, listen, if he could take a shorter deal, I'd be very interested in him because he's put up some really good numbers, been in a top 4 role, a seasoned veteran at this point in time, and can move the puck better and offer a little bit more offensively than Pesce can. Maybe he's not as solidified as Pesce is, but I think Dylan DeMello would be a really good option for the Blackhawks that won't cost them a lot of money. Another guy that I absolutely love, and I know a lot of people do as well, it's Chris Tanev, 6'2", 195-pound right-handed defenseman. A little bit older, though, as he will turn 35 in December, and is coming off a year in which he tallied 19 points, 2 goals and 17 assists in 75 games for the Dallas Stars. Played a selfless and fearless role for Dallas all throughout the postseason. Defensive-minded, that's been the staple of his game for a long, long time. Did that for Calgary over the last 3 years, and did it for a while in Vancouver over the course of his 14-year career, and has been a top 4 defenseman for the last decade. So he's been there, he's done that, but he does have a little bit more mileage than some of these guys, but still very effective, and a guy who I think, like a Dylan DeMello and Brett Pesce, would look really good alongside a Kevin Korchinski or a Wyatt Kaiser as they continue to develop. Tanev isn't as physical as a DeMello or a Matt Roy or a Tyler Myers, but still very effective, blocks a lot of shots, and exquisite at puck retrievals and zone exits. Some of the better analytical numbers in those categories in the entire NHL. And like DeMello, isn't expected to break the bank. Next contract projected to be around $4.8 to $5 million. Undoubtedly will be in the short term, you have to think, because of his age. But the Blackhawks could offer him, a little bit more money than some other teams possibly could. So Tanev, I think, is someone they absolutely should be kicking the tires on. Getting into some options that won't cost as much money as those guys. Alexander Carrier, I think, is an intriguing option from Nashville. 5'11", 175-pound right-handed defenseman who's still only 27 and won't turn 28 until October. And had a really effective year with Nashville. Was the guy who took on the toughest minutes there. It wasn't Roman Josi and Ryan McDonough. No, it was Alexander Carrier and Jeremy Lauzon. And offensively, put up some decent numbers, 4 goals, 16 assists for 20 points in 73 games. Had 30 points in 73 games in the 2021-2022 season. So a little bit more puck-moving upside and a very effective shot blocker as well. Has put up some really solid analytics and only is projected to get around $4 million on his next contract. Now, he's a little bit undersized, and I do think that's one thing based on how Kyle Davidson's gone about his business that he is looking at. So I think that might push him out a little bit, and there are some question marks as, he's only kind of been an effective NHLer for the last 2.5 years. A little bit more risk with Alexander Carrier, but not as expensive, so could be an option possibly. Some other guys that I like, Jalen Chatfield, I think could be an intriguing low-cost option that could shore things up on the third pairing as well. 6 6'1", 190-pound right-handed defenseman who just turned 28 last month in May and had 22 points, 8 goals, and 14 assists in 72 games with Carolina. But again, there's that wonder. How is he going to look outside of that system? He's only been a full-time NHLer for the last 2 years. There's some risk there for Chatfield. And interestingly enough, he's projected to get $4 million on his next contract, which I don't see happening unless someone really takes a stab at him. But for like $2.5, $3 million, that could be an option for the Blackhawks. Matt Dumba, I think, is a veteran guy who's been there, done that. That could add some good stuff to the locker room and would undoubtedly be cheap, coming off a year in which he only had 12 points in 76 combined games for the Arizona Coyotes and the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's going to turn 30 this summer in July. His best days of hockey are probably behind him. And a little bit undersized. I don't think he's going to be one of Kyle Davidson's favorites, but could be a cheap veteran option. Another guy who's kind of in that mold that I would honestly prefer over Matt Dumba is Justin Schultz. He's got a little bit more size, 6'2", a little bit stronger and thicker, more filled out at 195 pounds. Turned 34 in July, so yeah, he is a little bit older, but I think he's still the more effective player at this point in his career. 26 points, 7 goals, and 19 assists in 70 games for the Seattle Kraken this past season, where he spent the last 2 years, but has bounced around from Pittsburgh to Washington. He's been in a lot of good organizations and is still an effective 20 to 30 point getter. Now, he's probably not that solution on the second pairing like a DeMello or a Tanev or a Brett Pesce or a Myers possibly, but I think he could be a cheap veteran add as like a 6th or 7th defenseman potentially, and he always puts up really good analytics. He's a respected veteran. He's been there, done that, won at all levels, so I wouldn't hate it. But as far as my favorites from this group, Brett Pesce, Chris Tanev, Dylan DeMello are probably my top favorites in terms of the higher end defensemen out there, but I wouldn't hate to see the Blackhawks go and add someone like a Jalen Chatfield or an Alexander Carrier, or even a Justin Schultz as a depth option. I do expect the Blackhawks and GM Kyle Davidson to be adding one of these names in free agency. Which one will it be? Which one do you want to see? Go and let me know in the comment section down below. But that's going to wrap up the top free agent defensemen on the market this year and which ones I would like to see Kyle Davidson pursue. Coming up in just a moment, before I wrap things up, I do still have to get into Emil Hemming's 2024 NHL Draft Profile. But first, real quick, I got to talk to you all about the fine folks over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in both the NBA and the NHL. Well, actually, the NBA championship wrapped up, but the Stanley Cup final not over yet. The Edmonton Oilers are hanging on for dear life, and also baseball is back in full swing, and FanDuel is your perfect place to bet on every single game. And if you're not already signed up and a member at FanDuel, make sure to go and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, because when you sign up, you'll get $150 worth of bonus bets guaranteed. Yes, you heard me right. $150 worth of bonus bets, whether your first bet is a win or loss. And you can use these bonuses to bet on everything from who's going to take home the Conn Smythe, who's going to score the Stanley Cup winning goal, who's going to win the Rookie of the Year this year. And you can also bet on who's going to hit a home run across all the great ballparks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Go and make your first bet an automatic win right here, right now by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon to make your first bet an automatic win and to receive $150 worth of bonus bets. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Again, a quick reminder to everyone watching on YouTube to hit that like button, comment down below, and to subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much. Ring the bell also gives you notifications for when the episode is uploaded every day on YouTube. And also to make sure to go and check out the new Locked On Sports Today, because Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every single league. So make sure to go and check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and to subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, segment 3. I still have a couple NHL draft profiles to get into before the NHL draft gets underway next Friday. We're hearing some interesting rumblings, by the way, out of Florida as Ivan Demidov has entered the United States. The Blackhawks are meeting him as I'm recording right here, right now. They could potentially be out to dinner with Ivan Demidov. And I'm personally keeping my fingers crossed that he's saying all the right things and he's winning them over, because I want him to be the second overall pick. And if you want to hear more about Ivan Demidov or any of the top prospects in this year's draft, I've covered most of the notables at this point in time. You can easily find all of those episodes on my channel under the NHL Draft Profile playlist. And again, please go and hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. The next prospect that I'm going to be getting into here today, though, is none other than Emil Hemming, a 6'1", 205-pound winger, a big boy who's still only 17 years old. He's actually going to turn 18 next Thursday, just before day one of the NHL draft. And he's already gotten some pro experience over in Finland. This past season, he played 40 games in Finland's Liga, the top men's professional league over in Finland, where he had 11 points, 7 goals, and 4 assists in 40 games. Nothing that really jumps off the table there, but you got to consider 17 years old going up against grown men. From what I read, he was also utilized mostly in like a fourth line checking role. So maybe not the best situation for his offensive game to shine. And also when you go and look at the numbers that he put up in the Finnish U20 league, 18 points, 11 goals and 7 assists in 13 games worth of action. Looks like he's going back to TPS to play in Finland's Liga once again, hopefully as a little bit more of a full-timer and maybe in a little bit more natural of a role for him next season. But when playing against his peers, when playing against kids the same age, he puts up some really good numbers. He had 6 points, 4 goals, and 2 assists in 7 games at the U18 World Juniors and 2 assists in 7 games as a 17-year-old at the U20 World Juniors. And getting into the rankings, it is very polarizing for Emil Hemming. One of the most polarizing rankings that I've seen thus far. Rated 40th by Elite Prospects, then 15th by Bob McKenzie. Elite Prospects has him going 10th overall in the second round. Bob McKenzie has him being a lottery pick, 15th overall. Craig Button has him going 28th, or has him ranked 28th, excuse me. Tony Ferrari has him ranked 23rd, 25th by McKean's Hockey, 17th by Chris Peters. So again, a top 20 ranking there, but then drops all the way down to 31st according to Daily Faceoff, 37th by Sportsnet, and 38th by Dobber Prospect. So Emil Hemming is all over the place, and I think that's just partly because when you get guys who have time split between a professional league and guys of their age, it's kind of hard to get a full grasp of exactly what type of upside they have. And Hemming is still only 17 years old, but what is very clear is he has a lot of raw talent. And from one scout that I read, if this draft was in terms of raw talent and kind of your mold, Emil Hemming would probably go top 10 because he has a makeup that NHL general managers are going to love. He's got the size, he's got the skating, and he's got the shot. All jump off the charts when you watch this kid. And for being 205 pounds as well at 17 years old, you know, you got to love that. Played in a checking role against grown men this past season. Yeah, general managers are going to love that. But the skating is really notable for his size. Absolutely. Really good edge work. The top level speed is excellent for a guy of his size, better than, you know, some of the even smaller forwards that are I've already covered that are projected to go higher than him in this draft. Really good acceleration as well, can get to that top level speed in a hurry for a player of his size. But the best part of his offensive game is undoubtedly the shot. He's got special goal scoring abilities, can score on the one-timer, scores a lot of goals on the power play from the one-timer at that left circle, can also walk into the offensive zone and completely rip it past the opposing goaltender. I think that's going to be his best asset at the next level. Add some pretty smooth hands along with that. Not an elite dangler, but a capable puck handler, someone who's capable of carrying it along with him at a high speed, which again is great for a player of his size and his speed. General managers are going to love that makeup. As far as the weaknesses go, Definitely doesn't possess special puck moving abilities. I think he's going to be more of a goal scorer than a playmaker at the next level, with which kind of caps his upside a little bit. It's not the end of the world as a winger, but he does have capped playmaking abilities. I also would like to see him work on his defensive consistency. Like, for a player of his size, going up against grown man at a young age, I think is going to do him wonders, but he's going to have to add some other tools to his arsenal to make him kind of reach that ceiling at the next level, because he has those capped offensive abilities. I think, like, I'd like to see him be really effective along the boards and along the wall, and maybe show some penalty killing upside as well. And there have been concerns about the consistency on the effort level side of things too, which you don't love to hear, but isn't all that uncommon for a 17 or 18-year-old kid who's known for his offensive abilities at that point in his career. But I do think he's going to have to make himself more versatile to be the most effective that he can be at the NHL level. But as far as a projection, I think Emil Hemming kind of is pretty clear cut. I think he's going to be a middle six, but maybe more of a third line winger who can score goals. I think he has 20 goal upside at the next level. But again, that upside is limited. And I don't know if I ever really see him being more than like a 45, 50-point guy who's really getting most of it from the goal scoring department. But again, there's a lot of raw talent, a lot of runway there. Only 17 years old. He's got the size, he's got the speed, he's got a good skill game, not the best skill game, but a good skill game. And he's already getting good experience against grown men, which you love to see at his age. Someone's going to wind up taking him in the first round, I fully believe, probably between numbers 20 and 25. As far as a long-term fit for the Blackhawks, I think 18 is just a little bit early for Emil Hemming to go. Probably like 22 through 27 maybe is a more accurate range of when he gets drafted. But if he were to fall to 34, like some of these, scouts and analysts think is possible, then I'd be in at 34. I think he has the diversity and the size that would be intriguing to this forward group. And he also doesn't sacrifice the speed along with it. And we know Kyle Davidson likes to add speedy prospects, and he's just different than kind of the offensive makeup that they have a lot of in their forward group already. So I wouldn't hate Emil Hemming. 18 would be a reach for me, but if he fell to 34, like, yeah, that could definitely be a pick. We'll see if that winds up happening. But that's going to wrap up Emil Hemming's 2024 NHL Draft Profile, and going to wrap up today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. As always, thank you all again for joining me on the show. Wow, this one ran really long, but had a lot of good stuff to get into. So for anyone who tuned into this point of the show, thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to go and follow Locked On Blackhawks for free right now, wherever you may be listening to your podcast, and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. That way you can get all of the latest episodes as soon as they're uploaded each and every day. You can find me on X at Jack Bushman 2. My strictly Blackhawks account is at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. So until tomorrow's episode, everyone, stay tuned for that. I'm going to be talking a lot about Ivan Demidov meeting with the Chicago Blackhawks, what we're hearing from that. Stay tuned, but until tomorrow's episode, everyone stay safe. I'll see you on the next episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.